Near Abingdon. Oh,
Carry on, sorry.
Carol, I live near Abingdon with my husband Andy. I'm 53. I work full-time at a small biofarm company, and I haven't been happy in my role for quite a while. And I've been thinking I ought to sort of talk to somebody and find like where I should be in life at this moment. And then by chance I came across Natalie earlier this year, and it all just seemed to slot into place, like just jump in and do it. And spoke to Natalie last week. It all sounds a little bit scary, all this going back to childhood and finding yourself, or it might be emotional, I don't know, but I'm ready for a change of direction, and this I'm hoping will help me do that.
Ready, we're in. Amazing, thank you so much. And yeah, we've kind of got a full cohort now, so a few kind of late arrivals, but everyone's caught up and we're at the same point in time now. So just for Carol and David, we obviously start a lot on childhood essence because there's so much power in childhood essence. So I talked a lot last week around the fact that we're born into the world like so different and unique, and often we lose sight of that along the way in terms of our uniqueness, our kind of like the bits that make us quirky. So this first module is about really diving in and reconnecting with some of that stuff we may have forgotten or lost along the way. And that's what we're going to kind of debrief and go through today. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on anything that we may firstly want to unlearn. So I'll talk a little bit about beliefs. So I guess, does anyone know what a belief is and how a belief is formed? No. How is a belief different from a value, for example?
Should be able to answer that.
So a belief is something that we take on without question. So we take it on as our own, but we don't question it in any way, right? So it becomes something we adopt that then changes how we act in the world. So a big belief that a lot of us struggle with is like, I'm not enough. That's a big feeling or a big belief that we kind of maybe have learned along the way, that we don't question, we take it on, and then it affects how we are in the world. So some of these beliefs are formed between kind of 0 and 7. So my first question is there anything that we learn from our parents or we learn about the world that we want to first unlearn? Because some of that isn't ours. So question to everyone on that, in terms of just any beliefs along the way that we may have adopted that we came across in some of the homework, because we're not going to spend a lot of time there, but just a little bit. Massimo, you're nodding. Anything from you?
Can you hear me well, first of all? Because I'm having some, sound issue. I was nodding because I think one of the beliefs has taken a while for me to eradicate, has been around myself being clumsy. I know where this is coming from, but I found out about this belief, later on in my life. So that's definitely something that, has annoyed me for quite a few years.
Okay. And again, you can link back into like when maybe you learned that belief or when it came up and what kind of was going on to make you think that a belief as well, because that would be interesting. Anyone else? Anything that we learned that maybe we now think really differently about in the world? Like me and David talk a lot about financial mindset, for example, like, beliefs around money. Money doesn't grow on trees. That's the kind of belief that actually we take on, and then we just live our life by that belief subconsciously. Anything else there that we think might be? Lizzie, you've unmuted.
I don't know if it's. Oh, sorry.
No, Rona, you go.
You go, Rona.
I'll say I don't know if it's quite linked with a belief, but I think one of the things that I found really interesting in the homework was, so I did a lot of reflecting around this picture of me with a little dog that I had when I was about 6, and kind of like what I didn't talk about last week, but I guess is like fairly central in a lot of my picture, is that my mum passed away when I was 7, which I guess is like a little bit why last week I was kind of like, so is it definitely just up until 7 you want us to talk about? Like, because for me it was kind of like, because at 7 everything kind of changed. And I don't have a lot of memories really of those early years, and I think that's been a big issue for me over time, not really remembering what input my mum had, like what of me is my mum and what of me is my dad. So around that age I went into foster care and like a private arrangement, and I spent the weekends with my dad and then the weeks with my foster family. And then when I was looking at this little dog, so we had to give the dog back when my mum died, because my dad worked away from home. We had to give the dog back. It sounds like an old cowboy song. And I was really thinking about that, and I've always had a very logical mindset about, well, we couldn't keep him because I was in foster care and my dad was working away, and so it was just a very pragmatic. I hadn't really lingered on those feelings, but as I wrote reflections, I was just like, it's like a really unexpressed grief of having given my dog away, and having someone that I really loved taken away from me, and I kind of could see that there were a lot of parallels there with kind of like how I felt about my mum dying, which was never really, which I've never really explored really. I kind of was all very just sort of put in a box. And it was just interesting. Sorry, I feel like I'm waffling now, but when I think about that pragmatic approach, that is very much my dad's way. And so when I think about me and my identity, it was kind of like quite a revelation, because I've been doing a lot of reflecting recently around one of my values that came up from that thing was around certainty.
Yeah.
And how I make decisions based on facts and needing order and control. And the psychologist that I was speaking to is asking me to explore that. And I'm just sort of, so it's just sort of unwinding a bit really, I guess. Like that's what
it's all about. Just like
part
exploring
of my dad.
Deeper every time. So like it's like an onion, so we're just like peeling back the layers and like understanding like, oh, that's interesting, that might link to that, and it's all about just diving in and understanding. And this bit is around that kind of, we learn to be, who we learn about who to be in the world from those around us, right? But actually some of that isn't ours. So some of the beliefs from our caregivers or our parents like do affect us, and we get to choose about which of that we take on and which of that is not ours. And this is all about reflection of the fact that actually I understand that's all shaped me, and this is the stuff I choose to take forward. And that's why we're spending a little bit of time on that belief piece, because there might be just a little bit about one. So mine is like, I was so loud and I was born into a family of introverts. So it was like, oh, you're too much. Be quiet. Oh, just stop trying to get a center of attention all the time. So I was like trying to be on stage. So it was like me, I was like, I took on that, oh, I can't be too much. And I went the opposite way, right? So it's just interesting how some of that can just shape, but we're not going to spend loads of time there. But it's important just to kind of know that you can choose and give some of that back if it's not yours as well. Any other thoughts on that? Lizzie, you're going to say something.
I just wanted to say, to add to that as well, it's not so much about blaming anyone here either, or blaming our parents. It's just having an understanding and an empathy for them as well, because they obviously have their inner child wounds as well from their parents as well, but once you've got that understanding and that empathy, and you can forgive, and then you can step forward and take responsibility for your own behaviors and actions, and then step forward and choose to make changes as well there. So
The generational
Just
piece
add
is
that.
fascinating here. You know, I always say like you can break generational patterns because stuff's just handed down, you know, through generations, and actually we change that through our awareness. You know, and that's what, you know, that's what it's all about. Interesting. Okay, we're gonna flip just onto kind of the positive stuff side there, but I wanted to make the link to beliefs because we'll talk a lot about values and we'll come back to the beliefs bit, and it's important that we make the difference because values are the kind of conscious choosing part of beliefs, around kind of reframing a belief into then a positive value, which becomes almost the way we move forward in the world. So that's kind of important just to make that link. Okay, I'm going to go back to the kind of the letter, spending time in the emotions and the feelings in terms of the positive stuff that came up. And I want to just shout out any words that you resonated with in terms of when you went back and revisited some of those questions or wrote that letter, in terms of explaining who you were in terms of that childhood essence. Does anyone want to share anything? I know we did a little bit last week around some of the stuff that came up, but a whole week's worth of reflection. I just want to give you guys a chance to share. Sam, over to you. I'm going to pick on you.
For me, probably I was, I guess, more expressive and more, I've wrote a lot about, and it keeps coming up for me about when I reflect from my younger self to now around a lack of joy, or I think I said that before about limiting how much joy I give myself. But actually, the more I tap into joy and go into more of a playful state, the more creative I am and the more inspired I get and the more I kind of get ideas of stuff. So yeah, just about like expressing myself more in a way that just feels more joyful and more lighter. And I guess questioning why I'm not letting myself do that sometimes. I think just sometimes it's just like, you know, you've got other stuff you need to get done and you just do that and that becomes like the end, rather than actually maybe that should be the first thing to kind of start your day, and then from that everything flows a bit more easier.
I also think, you know, as we move into adulthood, we lose the ability to play and be curious and all of that, because as an adult, like you feel like you kind of can't, you feel like, oh no, I can't play and have fun, you know, it kind of gets lost with, you know, with the nature of growing up. But yeah, it's building some time into that to kind of protect some space, because that's where you know a lot of creativity and magic happens, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And I notice when I'm not carving out time for that, if it's been like, you know, quite a long time of not doing that, I get a lot of frustration. I start to feel quite irritable and reactive to things more than I normally would be. So that's like a reminder for me, like, right, Sam, where's the joy? You know, and
you like, it's your feel safe. You know, where's that? If you know, and it's all about keeping ourselves in balance.
Yeah, and having that awareness
to do that. I'd be like, oh, something's off today. Oh, what do I need more of? And actually, then you can kind of rebalance yourself. Anyone ask any parents, sisters, siblings anything about themselves in terms of, you know, it's hard to remember? Did anyone go and ask, you know, family members kind of in order to help remember? Donna, nodding. Do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I asked my sister, and she was just like, you were fearless.
Fearless, I love that.
And then fearless, confident, really self-assured, which kind of shocked me actually, because I don't feel confident or self-assured anymore. But that was a bit of a surprise, really. But
we will, and you reconnect to that feeling, because that's always been within you, and this is about, you know, coming back to that, because actually it was always there, and that's really nice to hear. That's such strong words as well, because yeah, that's really probably important message for you to like have someone else tell you, because maybe you wouldn't have remembered that in the same way. Yeah, I love that. Any other thoughts? Carol, David, you're quite new to the process. Did you manage to get a picture, speak to your family, kind of get a feeling of how that was in terms of your childhood essence?
I found some pictures, but I haven't actually completed all the exercises from last week yet, so I haven't done that.
That's all right. Anything that came up from the pictures? Anything you noticed? Anything in terms of feelings or emotions?
Most of them are with my sister. There's one with us both in our brownie uniforms.
Oh, nice.
There's one of me running which I've started doing again a few years ago. I think the brownie thing ties into the beliefs, because my mum and my sister are heavily into guiding. And then when I left home, I thought, oh, that's what I should be doing because they do it. And I've been a brownie and a guide. And so I started helping out at a guide unit and then realized it's not for me.
Yeah, that's
So that ties in with beliefs, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like becoming the author of your own life story, and like they, quote, like, if don't let Jim make a plan for your life because he doesn't have a plan. It's like, maybe getting led down that path, but it wasn't yours. Yeah, it's interesting. Any other thoughts on that in terms of pictures, anything that we remembered that maybe moved us on from last week? So things like even, beloved toy, childhood best friend, like happiest memory, where you used to go on holiday, things like that can trigger kind of things that maybe cropped up. But this is all about just connecting to, it might be a color. We talked a lot about color last week, but connecting to almost anything that we want to remember, reconnect with, that then will support us moving forward. Massimo, David, before we move on, any thoughts from you? David, did you ask your mum? You're at home. Did you ask your mum, what was I like as a child?
Sorry, I didn't realise that was an exercise. No, I will after this.
What did you notice from your childhood pictures? Did you notice anything differently about yourself, or anything that what were you like as a child? Do you remember?
Yeah, I just remember being very carefree. I mean, I've written down here. What was the question? You just said like you're the best friend. Just got photos of us images of us just running around the garden on the kind of the monkey bars and whatnot, just playing tag and everything else, and just having just not really a care in the world. Yeah. And I think therefore it's kind of important to kind of bring that kind of into adulthood a bit more, and not be worried so much about silly bad things happening and just getting you down all the time.
Yeah.
Trying to have that carefree nature.
Yeah, it's
the
like
easier
the
said than done.
simplicity of it. Yeah, the simplicity of kind of seeing. I remember
living
when
in the
I
moment.
spent time with like young people, like young children, they just see the world in like such a different way, don't they, through that lens. And I think we could all learn something from that, through that, not the tainted glass almost. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to go into some little breakout rooms just for like 5-10 minutes, and I want you to talk through with just one other person a little bit about how it was writing your letter, because obviously that was quite probably a big thing to do for a lot of people, just because it takes a lot of courage as well to kind of almost spend time on that and really like sit with kind of the bits that maybe you would have gone back and done differently, for example, but just speak through and maybe ask each other a few guided questions around how that felt to do and maybe what you learned through the process. But we'll spend a bit of time just in smaller groups on this because it's quite a personal bit, and then we'll come back together and then look at how we move that forward. I always let Zoom decide who is with who, so I always trust the universe. So don't blame me. Who you end up with, I'm sure you end up with who you're meant to end up with. So it'll be 4 breakout rooms, or assign automatically. I think that's 4, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. And yes, you're going to get between 5 and 7 minutes, but me and Lizzie will probably drop in and out if that's all right. But yes, off you. Is it? No, I think Rona will, if I take, yeah, that's it. Okay, and I think I'll be with one person as well. Okay, guys, off you go. Enjoy. You're with me.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Thought I was just going to be talking to myself for a minute.
How was it? I know obviously I didn't write the letter, but yeah, this is a bit about you. How did it feel? Had you done anything like that before?
I've done lots of journaling. I didn't actually write a letter to myself, and I think partly because what I found most difficult to get past was looking at all the pictures and thinking, if only you knew.
Oh,
If
wow.
only you knew what's going to happen like next year.
Yeah. Oh, bless you. Yeah. So that was hard because that
And I couldn't really get past it because
was,
it felt like it was a secret that I couldn't
yeah.
talk to my younger self about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what was sort of preoccupying me, really.
Yeah.
And I was just making, so like some of the things in the pictures just sort of seemed like I was just so happy and carefree and, you know, a bit gregarious and a bit, you know, sort of more like most children of that age, really, I guess, you know, showing off and dancing around and doing all these things. But all the pictures of my mum and dad, they all look so serious. And I don't really know why. And I don't know who to ask either. They just look like they had the weight of the world.
Yeah. Which obviously makes sense why they almost looked and felt like that. But you were obviously picking
Well,
picking
even
up on it a lot subconsciously as well. Because you obviously, as an empath,
even
heavy
I
emotion.
don't know if you can see. So, oops.
Okay. Is that the right one?
What have we got there? Oh no, that's me in a pair of dungarees. That's not it.
That's like,
Random.
oh,
Where's
maybe
the
that
camera?
way. There we go. Oh yeah.
So that's me. I'm just born.
Yeah.
But look how serious he looks.
So really serene. And it feels
And
heavy.
then that way,
Yeah, yeah. Serious.
just sort of staring at me like.
Yeah.
I mean, parenting is like that, you know? Parenting is like that.
Yeah.
When you sort of take a moment to think about look, even in this one, when I'm a bit older,
Yeah.
I mean, my dad is almost, or not even older, look, I'm still a baby, what am I talking about? My
Yeah.
dad is nearly smiling, but and that made me feel a bit sad, you know?
Yeah.
But it has made
How
me,
much of that
sorry,
did
go
you
on.
maybe take on that wasn't yours to take on as well, right? Like how much, if we can kind of separate that heaviness and the emotion of that from it felt like almost you had to maybe grow up quite quickly, too soon almost.
I did, yeah.
A lot of joy that's lost, but it's almost thinking if we can take that away, what was Rona's dreams, you know, what did she want to be when she grew up? Because for me that's overshadowed. I think the almost there's a lot of like association between that obviously, but for me I really want to get into the kind of like without all of that, yes it was having a big effect, but like what was it that was really fascinating about you and the way you were in the world at that age, you know? And that's for me, we'll spend a bit more time but
yeah. See, I've got so very few people to ask.
But the more you spend on this work and the more you spend time meditating, slowing down, you'll just remember things and you'll be like, oh, that's so weird, I've just had a memory of this and that. It's about it's like an onion, so you kind of will start peeling back things and you'll realize, oh my god, I love to play the violin, or someone will just mention something, you know. So actually don't worry right now that this feels heavy, and that's often the hard thing with childhood essence. There's things that happen in our childhood that we struggle to get past, but we can't then see the beauty. But for us, just sitting with that, you know, accepting what's coming up now because you're processing stuff that needs to be processed, but maybe come back to this when you can maybe separate the two, because I want to get to the point where you see the beauty, and I think that's hard for you to see at the moment through the lens because there's a lot of heaviness that's sitting here.
Yes, and it's sort of very much a kind of you know, before and after, you know, and I'm not sure how important it is to separate those two, I guess, but I guess because we've said, you know, 0 to 7, there's this just real definite for me, that just almost two different worlds, because I can remember what I wanted to be when I was like 9, 10, after all that happened.
Mm.
But before,
sit with it, because it's not going to be the first time you visit this, isn't going to be the first time that it's going to become clear. So what I always say with child adolescence, it either really lands with people and they're like, oh my God, there's so much learning here, or it's the opposite and it's like, oh, but actually come back to it, because actually it might be that you need to revisit this later, and then you'll get kind of a deeper level or something open up. But yeah, accept what's coming up, because that's what's right for now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath. This is hard work, right? Like, this is actually really, and that's why, you know, there's a bridge of therapy and everything else that comes with this too. And I think it's knowing which bits to use to move forward. And for me, the essence and the power here is almost like, yeah, there's a real beauty in something that's hidden at the moment that we can't quite dig in and see, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Cool.
We'll bring you back and everyone back.
Oh, okay.
You're doing awesome.
Thank you.
Right, let me see if I
Oh.
We're back again, me and you.
There's a lot to sort of fit in, really, isn't there? I've tried to sort of squeeze it in where I can.
Exactly. It's not easy to do this work in just an hour. Like, I think this is where child adolescence is great, but actually it's sometimes a box that I don't want to open, because it's such a big one, but it's so important to reference it, because actually we're sometimes trying to get back to who we were always trying to be as a child. So it's important to make that link, but actually not get stuck too much in the heaviness, because that's not the place of coaching, you know. So it's quite a hard line in terms of like this topic, in terms of how it's covered, but and everyone receives it so differently.
Yeah.
Hello guys.
Oh.
Welcome back. We were just saying, me and Rona were just saying, like, with this work, child adolescence, Lizzie, you'll completely agree, won't you? The last 2 courses, it's either like, oh my God, this is amazing, or it's like, I hate it. So this, like, let's label and get that out there right now. If this is like, 1, I don't have any resonance with it, or 2, I just don't want to go there, that's totally fine. Or it'll be like gold dust and you'll be like, oh my God, like the story I told you about the lady that's now working in the maternity ward that literally loved babies since she was a child and asked her neighbors if she could take their babies on a walk, you know. So don't worry if this isn't resonating or fitting, or the puzzle, or the bit of the puzzle just isn't quite fitting, because we can go back to this later and kind of have a different perspective of it. And that's often the way. If this isn't quite fitting, or you're trying to force it, just give it some space, and we'll come back to it at the end and just use it as a frame of reference, and we'll use kind of like the perspective of the inner child as we kind of move through the coaching course. So I think it's just important to say that, because it's not always easy, and all of it isn't always for us, because there's a lot of content in this course, but there'll be bits you love and there'll be bits that don't resonate.
Actually,
anyone to feed? Sorry, Lizzie, you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to like add to that and say, like, yeah, if anyone is feeling that there's any kind of like negativity or trauma that's arising to dealing with this stuff, then that's okay. But yeah, it is then an opportunity for you to do some of this work outside with, you know, a therapist or a healer of the sort as well. So that's there too. We don't spend time processing the emotion, but if something comes up, that's a great avenue to take that further outside of the conversation, and that's where kind of counselling and therapy comes in. But we're very much around using information and using that to move us forward, and that's the difference with coaching and then counselling and therapy. But you can see why I want to spend a bit of time here, because there's a lot of like hidden gems that we can kind of realize through just looking at a picture, stuff that opens up for us that we're like, oh my God, had no idea, right? How did those conversations go? Anyone want to share? And if you don't, that's completely fine. No. I was put with Samantha, and her letter was amazing. It was so nurturing, kind, supportive, loving. I think well, Samantha said she's done some inner child work before, so I can really see that actually it's had a very positive impact on her just through the words that she was using, and yeah, just the way you came across as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed doing it. I thought I got a lot from it. And we were just saying, I think like inner child healing for me in work has been really, it's been a massive part of my journey and really helped me along the way. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and if this is the first time you've asked these questions and look back, don't expect an answer or to kind of have breakthroughs overnight. Like this work can take, you know, years, months, you know. So just have it in your toolkit to just look back on and dive into even more as you move forward, you know. And as parents, I think is a really interesting perspective for your children, right, in terms of the childhood essence. It's so powerful, like that piece around observing like your children and how they're different in the world, and like getting them to embrace their unique strengths, you know, and support their differences, right? Whereas like for me, I was like so extrovert and my family was so introvert, they didn't know what to do with me. It was like, oh, but actually that's no one's fault. It's just the fact that we're all doing is the best that we can do. But that awareness in terms of just being aware of some of that stuff is fascinating. Cool. Awesome. Any other thoughts before we're going to spend a little bit of time? We're going to ask, I'm going to ask a question which to kind of flip it on its head. Is there any parts that exist stronger than ever? Because we haven't lost all of those bits. Is there anything that exists that's still there from childhood that we're like, yeah, that's there, you know, it's even bigger and brighter?
I don't know about bigger and brighter, but like going around in a circle, like the only things I was interested in at school were PE and science. And now I run again, and I've just finished a nutrition course, which is science as well as food. So it's like a come back to where I was.
Full circle. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. Okay, awesome. Lizzie, you're going to do a little 5-minute, and just Lizzie's not very good with timings with these things. She likes to do long meditations, but we're only going to do 5 minutes, Lizzie, if that's all right, or 5 to 7 minutes. We'll do a soft meditation that's just kind of like bed in and process some of this, and then we're going to give you a bit of an overview in terms of values, because actually we're moving on to values. This doesn't stop here. We will mention childhood essence, we'll bring it through in the rest of the course, but it's important we don't spend too long here, because obviously this isn't therapy, but actually it's a really important frame as well. So we'll be talking a little bit more about values and the stuff that you're going to go on and do over the coming week as well. So feel free to turn off your cameras, because with stuff like this, you probably just want to switch off and not be on camera. So feel free to do that. And yeah, Lizzie, over to you.
All right, everyone. Well, getting yourselves nice and comfortable. So just lengthen through the spine, and then I invite you all to gently close your eyes. And as you gently close your eyes, let's just all begin by tuning into the space. So just feeling a sense of openness and expanse in this space. With that sense of openness and expanse, just allow your whole body to soften, to settle. So just allow the feet to become soft, the legs to become soft, pelvis to become soft, spine to become soft, shoulders and arms and hands to become soft, head to be soft, and face to be nice and soft and relaxed as well. Then gently taking your awareness from the softness of the body to the softness of your breath. So just start to observe the natural rhythm and the quality of your breath here and now in this moment. Just allow the breath to become nice and steady. And as you allow the breath to become nice and steady, I'd like you now to take a nice deep inhale through the nose and a big exhale out the mouth. Nice deep inhale through the nose and another exhale out the mouth. And another deep inhale through the nose and then exhale it all out the mouth. And then just notice how the body softens a little bit more The breath starts to ease and soften as well. And now from here, I'd like you to take a visualization. So just imagining now that I'd like you to take yourself back to your earliest happy memory of your family home. So you're just visualizing your family home just in front of you. So you've got the garden there. And as you look into the garden, I'd just like you to take a scan around. And perhaps you spent a lot of time in your childhood in your garden. So just taking in the colors, the smells, and perhaps any sensations. So perhaps you might have noticed the temperature. Maybe that's a memory that's stuck with you. Maybe there's some toys in the garden as well that you played with. Or perhaps there was a particular tree that you might have climbed in the garden. Or just thinking about some activities that you played or did in that garden space. So just spending a few moments here, just observing the garden. Again, taking note of sounds, smells, temperature, activities, games, and just seeing what feelings and emotions arose in relation to your time in the garden at home. Just going to spend a couple of moments here. And just allow yourself to feel those emotions and those feelings from your heart space. And then we're going to take a step from the garden. So we're going to move to the front door of the house. And then as you walk into the house, you're going to go up to your bedroom. So perhaps you went up the stairs and you'll go to your bedroom door. Just perhaps remembering what the bedroom door looked like, opening the door. And as you step into your bedroom, taking in the color of the walls, the color of the carpet, perhaps your bed, and taking in the toys that you had in your room and perhaps the books. And again, just noticing what feelings, thoughts, and emotions are arising in relation to those things that you're taking in. Again, remembering some games, some activities that you used to play, the books that you used to read. We're just spending a few moments just noticing, feeling, observing. And again, feeling that from your heart space. Taking it all in. Just observing with curiosity, with joy. Okay, and then we're going to leave the bedroom. Close the door. We're going to go back down the stairs. And then we're going to leave the house. And just before we tune out of this meditation, I'd just like you as well to take yourself in. So how old are you there? What clothes are you wearing? The color of your clothes? How do you look? What are your emotions? Just before we say goodbye to our childhood selves. And then you'll see your adult self. Just give your childhood self a nice big hug. Wave goodbye. And then stepping from this visualization back into your body, into the here and now. Just taking a moment. And then when you're ready, very gently opening your eyes.
Thank you, Lizzie.
I tried to make that quick.
That was good for you. Good. Okay, so we're not going to spend a lot of time sharing after that, because that can just help you embody it. A lot of this is about not thinking it, but feeling it. We're not very good at feeling it. And actually things like that can just really help us take us back to that moment in time and have some future clarity. So what I just say with that is maybe after the session, note down a few things that came up, just make a note of a few things like that. And it might be that there's some information there moving forward. But the more you do these kind of reflections, the more just random details will come up. Because again, it's about the layers, and every time we learn a little bit more. Okay. So that is all the time we're going to spend on childhood essence. And I don't lie when I say it's a whistle stop tour in terms of that, but you can see why it's a really important start, because there's so much beauty in that. And there's so much power in understanding the fact that actually everything around us shapes us at every turn, right? You know, our childhood, like we need other people to survive. So in order to survive, we fit in, you know, and some of these unique elements of us kind of get lost along the way because we're trying to be, you know, we're trying to feel safe, we're trying to kind of feel normal. And it's just checking in on some of that and understanding how it's affected who we've gone on to become. Which leads us really nicely into values, because obviously values are the opposite of a belief. So a value is chosen by us. It's almost an inner compass, because actually our values guide us forward in terms of who we're becoming. So our values are around who do we want to become and how do we get there. So they're the kind of like roadmap almost. Okay, and I'm a massive believer in values, and it's not about the word, it's about the feeling. Okay, so we're going to, over the next week, do a lot of work around you and you identifying your top 5 values. But it isn't about telling me or reeling off your value of freedom, forgiveness. It's about knowing how that shows up in your life. Okay, so Lizzie, tell me one of your values and tell me how you honor that value on it. Give me an example. Bring it to life for me.
Truthfulness.
And how do you honor that?
By listening to my intuition more. So my gut feeling, which you know that I've been doing a lot more of recently. So
yeah. And what conflicts that value? Does anything conflict that value?
Yeah, so for example, other people's judgments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Rona, you've done a bit of work with this on me with it. Can't talk. Bit of work with me on this.
Yeah.
Tell me about one of your values and how you honor that in your day-to-day life.
Joy. Is it joy? No. What's it called? Pleasure.
Pleasure.
I've got a whole load of work on it. Pleasure. Yeah. I think I honor pleasure by making time for myself to do things that are just for me, that are not for the family, not for the people I work for, not for my children, not for anybody else, but just for me. Little things like just taking time to sit outside in the garden with a cup of tea and nobody else there.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that, just little things.
Conflicts pleasure. Is there anything that really just really gets in the way of it?
Well, yes. So probably my impulsivity and some unhealthy habits, particularly sort of like around eating and spending and that sort of
you can start
drive to have things because I want them.
Okay.
That's
okay.
That gets in the way.
Cool. Thank you so much. And to pick on one more of you, David, freedom. We talk a lot about freedom. So talk to me about freedom. How would you honor freedom? Like, how does that show up in your life? What does that mean to you?
It's just the ability to do what you want, when you want, and how you want to do it, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I've gone self-employed, for example, so that I can have the freedom to work when I want to work. And that is a big value of mine.
What gets in the way of it?
Having what gets in the way of it? Too much work. I think it's a counterintuitive. You start working for
Yeah,
yourself.
it's about boundaries, right? So
More
actually,
freedom, and then you end up working more.
so where you can see I'm going with this is almost, it's getting super crystal clear about how you honor it. Because actually, we all have morals or values or have an idea. Like Donna, we spoke a lot about family values, didn't we? In terms of like you kind of saying, actually, what are our family values, which I love the idea of. But we don't often get into the, so what does that mean? And that's where this is different, because it's like, well, actually, I need to see, you need to show me that you're going to honor that. And that's where the accountability comes in, right? Because we're shifting behavior patterns, we're shifting programs, old programs that are out of date, we're updating the computer software. And this is where the value comes in to guide us forward. So every decision that we have in our day, we should be able to check in on our values and ask for the answer. Because actually, they both have a yes, everything has a yes and a no and links to something. So they become a really useful tool. You know, so I always use the example of if someone calls you up and asks to go for a coffee and you get that feeling of like, oh, I just don't know, there's something that's not making me want to go for a coffee with this person. You might have a value of forgiveness, and that person may hold grudges, for an example. And so the whole time you're having a coffee, you know, that person talks about the lack of forgiveness or the grudges they're holding with other people, right? And that just really conflicts something within inside you. So you can kind of see that subconsciously it all makes sense, but you've got to bring it into your awareness to then work with it, to then like navigate out of those situations. And that's where the boundary comes in, right? Boundaries become so easy if we're clear about the why, but we can't put a boundary in place and say no if we don't know what the cost is first. So it's about understanding the cost, like what's the cost of that? What am I losing? And then the boundary becomes really easy. It's like, well, yeah, obviously I'm not going to do that. So can you kind of see the steps in terms of how we then get to the point where it becomes a bit easier to make that change? And the big kind of quote I always say with this work is, who were you before the world told you who to be? A little bit of that, but also it's kind of that piece around the fact that we can choose, and the values are supporting us in who we're becoming. So your values need to be moving you forward, not keeping you stuck. You know, so think about that when you're listing your values. Like, is this helping me move forward? You look like you're pensive, David. Did anything coming up there? Does it all make sense to you? Happy? You just did a weird face then.
I'm happy. Yeah.
You're happy. Carol, how does that land for you? Because I know you're quite like we've not spoken about values at all. How does that land for you? Kind of
it's maybe around friendships. I value friendships, but only if it's a two-way thing. If I find myself always having to instigate the contact and it doesn't work the other way, then that's not a friendship I would value as much. And a while ago I had what I thought was a friend, but she only ever contacted me when there was something wrong. Yeah, she wanted to offload, which I was happy to do because that's what you do for friends, but not if that's the only time they contact you. So then, yeah, the value of that friendship, it wasn't a huge value to me. It was obviously a huge value to her because it was helping her.
Yeah. Which is really interesting, isn't it? Because again, you need to kind of understand sometimes, or just like look at the situation from an observer's perspective, and then you might see a bit of a different outcome. The only other thing I'd say on values is when you do your quiz and you line them all up and things like that, a lot of people say they struggle to honor every value all the time. So you might find that like different circumstances, you might have a slightly different value set or a different priority order. But actually you should be able to like rate them in terms of importance, and you'll actually probably have one value or two that's fundamental, that drives everything. And then you might find in certain situations, work or home, there might be a few different shifts. So self-care, you know, or peace, for me, peace as a value is really important, but that might not have as much context in the work scenario. So allow that fluidity, but it's about not having to wear all these different masks. It's about trying to bring our true authentic self to every situation. I always say I loved that campaign, Bring Your Whole Self to Work Day. It's like, what if we all brought our true self to work? Like, there'd be so much value there, but we feel like, I can remember my dad saying that's a belief. Oh no, work and pleasure. You can't mix work and pleasure, right? And it's like, it makes you separate everything, you know, and it's a real like missed opportunity there because there's so much kind of authenticity that could add value as well. Massimo, you've done a little bit of work with values on me. How's that landing? And do you want to say anything around like how it's made you think differently?
Yeah, I think there are a few, it was interesting to hear, about conflict, particularly when it comes, to certain values. I think one of them for me, and interestingly enough, it's one of those I'm trying to apply now that I'm physically here with my parents, and it's around boundaries.
Yeah.
And yeah, so because what I've noticed, as soon as I don't honor that value, I start feeling tense or sick, like my body, even though, rationally I tell myself it's okay, we can actually accommodate this. My body doesn't really, want to hear that anymore.
Yeah.
And I was, going through one of those conversations with my parents. Yeah, basically, yeah. So I think that's helping me because it's a reminder. So physically, I get this reminder that, if I don't do that, it just goes against myself, basically. So that's what I'm noticing now.
Thank you for sharing. And I think by the end of this program, I think, Lizzie, you'll agree, like we get to the point where you wear your values like your badge of honor. They become something that just becomes non-negotiable for you. And actually, it's like meeting someone in the park for a dog walk. You get to the point where you're like, I'm Natalie and my values are like, it's that fundamental and important. It sounds a bit cheesy, but it really is so life-changing if we can get clear on that, because then we get to choose and we get to govern and guide ourselves, and we hear a lot about, the analogy of like almost paddling downstream without a paddle, and that's the thing. The values give you that paddle, they give you that direction, they give you that purpose that leads you to the why, and everything else is beautiful around life purpose as well. It all starts here in terms of, the who and the what's important. And again, it might not happen overnight. So just be patient with this process, maybe even start with 1 or 2 and really look into the action and behavior around 1 or 2 and get that right, rather than trying to kind of like discover it all overnight, because this can be quite a big question. Isn't it crazy, by the way, how we all have company values for the organizations we work with, and then you ask yourself, like, do you have personal values? And everyone's like, no. Like, I do that. I do so many workplace sessions and like we talk about company values, and then we've never thought about that ourselves. It just seems crazy, doesn't it, in the sense that actually that's such an important part to start at. Any thoughts, reflections on values before I let you guys go? Because I'm just aware of time, and a lot, as I always say with these sessions, a lot of the work happens outside. A few of you aren't on Slack yet. Please do get sorted, because that's where I can support you. So if you're not linked in yet, it's hard for me to guide you through this through the week. And I really want to be like there when you're kind of honoring something or figuring something out, because that's where it's really useful for you. But yeah, this is, I always say it about every part of this course, but this is my favorite bit. Lizzie, anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, I liked what Massimo was saying about the physical feelings he felt in his body in relation to his values and any conflict to his values. So yeah, if you're sort of looking at your values and you're discovering your values, it's connecting with the feelings that you feel in your body, positive, negative, happy, sadness, joy, contentment, and the energy, the energy it brings up. If you feel like you think there's a certain value that you have about something, but actually you feel very drained from that value, then actually is that a value, or actually is that more a conflict to you?
And this is why me and Lizzie are both here, because I'm very much strong in the mindset bit. Lizzie's really strong in the embodiment. And actually, what I'd start with, if that feels hard in terms of where is this in my body, is actually, does it give me energy or drain my energy? That's probably a really good place to start. In daily activities, conversations with people, do I walk away from that person and feel uplifted, or do I walk away from that person and feel drained? That's a really good place to start. It just gives us a bit of a guide about whether that's in alignment or whether that's kind of slightly out of alignment. So for me, that really helped, because it was, people ask me, where do you feel that in your body? I'm like, I don't know, like my chest, it's so hard because we're not taught that, and it takes time. So maybe start with that check-in on the energy question of like, how are my energy levels? You know, that could be a question you ask throughout the day. Okay, any thoughts? Anything anyone wants to ask before we let you all go?
What you just said.
I'll take on, Carol.
Thank you. It's just a quickie. What you said about company values and, you know, our company makes good quality products, and yeah, we should give ourselves a good quality life.
Yes. Exactly. What you've just said sums it all up, right? Like, oh my God, there's so much power in that, isn't there?
Yeah. That was it. Thank you.
Who else?
I was just going to say, we did some values work with Kate Natalie a few weeks ago, and it's really resonated, actually, really struck a chord with me. It was just particularly one around kind of one of my values is family, and it's really made me kind of question the sort of jobs that I'm going for, because I've been looking at jobs which are an hour and a half commute and which are 40-hour weeks, and actually that's just not going to sit right. I've got a young family, and it, do you know what I mean? It's really starting to
amazing
to resonate. So
thank you for
I'm
sharing.
looking forward to doing more work around it.
Thank you. And that Donna's doing the generation run. We're a social enterprise and we do a lot of corporate wellbeing programs. So it's amazing that Donna's in one of those programs and then she's come to the individual as well, because you've kind of got the two perspectives there. But yeah, I talk about values a lot when we're job hunting. Funnily, in the last cohort, 3 people got a new job because they were questioning obviously life purpose and everything like that. And actually values give you your kind of like what you're looking for, and you become the interviewer, because you're like, actually, I know my personal values, like, do they match my personal values? Like, it puts you in the driving seat. And I think that's fascinating, isn't it, that we're often being interviewed, but we're like, hang on a minute, I'm not sure that you align with my value of freedom here. You know, there's so much power in that. So I think that's a really interesting reframe, isn't it, Donna? And I think it's nice that you're having that conversation internally about the job, and because that's showing that it's resonating, but you're integrating some of this as well, which is what it's all about, integrating it and moving forward in a slightly different way.
That's brilliant, because I've been thinking about my role and it doesn't fit me, and I've talked it through with somebody else, and I've got a one-to-one with my boss this week, so that all ties in.
There we go.
Yeah.
We'll end up interviewing him. He'll be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Well, I know what I want now.
One way that you
I want to change. I want to stay with the company, but I want to change my role, and I can see a way of making it work if other people cooperate. So I started putting that into place Friday and today, and then I've got the meeting on Thursday.
It puts you back in the driving seat, doesn't it?
I mean, you can say no, but at least I can present it in the way that I feel is right.
Yeah, and think about that. The career piece, the career transition piece is really powerful here, but there's so many other relationships, you know, there's so many other parts of our lives where this applies, and it can be massively transformational if we're at a crossroads where actually we can't make a decision. We always come back to our values. I always say we will get lost along the way. We will lose ourselves, find ourselves, lose ourselves, find ourselves through our life. As long as we have the tools of the values and the tools that we need to bring ourselves back, that's all that we need. You know, and all those big kind of like crossroads, we can kind of always fall back on those values, but those values will change, right? So don't feel like bad or any grief if you lose one along the way, because there's a beauty in that. And I spoke to somebody the other day, they're like, oh, I never thought of values of changing. And I was like, well, why wouldn't they? You're constantly changing as a human being, so why wouldn't your values change with you? And I always say your values should be pushing you forward. So if they're not pushing you to get uncomfortable, then actually maybe they just need to be relooked at. So I won't say any more because I will ruin the beautiful coursework that you're going to go and do. But please do reach out to me and Lizzie this week if there's anything you're getting stuck on that you can't integrate it with. We're very much going to be looking at action and behavior next week. So we're going to be bringing our values, and I'll be really pushing you around. Donna, show me one way that this week you've honored your value of X. That's the kind of stuff I want to start to see, because that's going to shift the behavior. Okay, so that's where we're getting to with this, rather than like the words, is kind of more into the action, the feelings, and the behavior. Any final comments? And we're staying at 7, by the way, everyone. So all good for 7 o'clock. I managed to wiggle through a few things around. So yeah, me and Lizzie will stay just for like 5-10 minutes for anyone that wants to check in on anything, but I have overran and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I look forward to speaking to you all in the week. Make sure you get Slack sorted. Call me or email me if you need me to walk you through the steps. And yeah, we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
everyone.
Leslie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, Lizzie, I'll give you a call on the way home. Is that all right? Because I've just got to get out of this building.
Yeah, sure. Well, no worries. I'll see you soon.
Call you shortly. Bye.